Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is another interview, guest speaker interview session here in Self-Publishing Made Simple. You're probably used to me just doing my live Q&As every Tuesday, but, I'm not holding the knowledge of this world and I'm not an expert in everything. So I'm bringing in some guest experts, some featured experts in our community as well to share some insights that might help aspiring authors in our community. And I know that some members of our group are thinking about writing books that might be a little bit controversial. Some of you might have experienced some degree of trauma, abuse, or just have some interesting life experience and would like to share some perspective that they've taken from their life and share it with the world, but not really quite sure how you're going to frame your message or how you're going to speak your truth in the digital world. So our guest expert today is a creative marketing and branding expert, and she's going to talk with us today about how to speak your truth in the digital world. So without further ado, let's all welcome Lindsey Tague. Hi, Lindsey.
Hi, Emee. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you very much for joining us today. And, this conversation is going to be so useful to so many members in our community. We have a lot of aspiring authors who are thinking about writing books that might be a little bit touchy and sensitive in some areas. So I think to have this conversation and how we can stay true and speak the truth in this digital world would be really quite helpful. But before we get into that, Lindsey, tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do and how did you get into this area?
Sure. So just wanted to start off by saying I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me. And I'm excited to dive in and talk about this. I'm very passionate about sharing my message, telling my story, and speaking my truth. That's very important to me. And so I'm actually a personal brand strategist. So I help visionary entrepreneurs um, rise above the digital noise to tell their story and share their message. And in doing so, building a brand for themselves, will obviously create success in within their business. And so, everyone here being authors, it's important to have a personal brand because as you can't just write a book and put it out there and expect people to purchase it. So it's really important to get into the online space, to tell your story, to craft a message that that stems from your mission, essentially. And that's how I pretty much formulated or developed mine over the last 2 or 3 years. So I made the jump from employee to entrepreneur about 2 or 3 years ago. And really what bridged the gap for me was creating my personal brand. And I don't know if did you want me to kind of explain what a personal brand is, just
Yes,
in case?
please do.
Yeah.
Because I mean, for authors, it's really not just about writing a book. You're absolutely right. For some members in our community, one of the reasons why they are writing a book is not just to share a story, but also to try to establish themselves as an expert and also try to build their brand. When you have a book, you're putting your message out there and you're putting yourself out there, and with that, it's a face, it's a story, it's a message, it's an entire package. And in a book is a great way to let people know who you are. And I think it's gonna be a fantastic conversation.
Yeah.
And as far as personal branding is concerned, for those authors especially who are thinking about writing a book series, for example, having that personal branding to begin with, this is actually a good place to start. So tell us a little bit about personal branding, Lindsey, and what is this all about?
Sure. So your personal brand is a lot of people, when they think of branding in general, they think that it's design. They think that it's a logo or your website. And yes, that is a part of it, but that only scratches the surface. branding, and more specifically personal branding, to me is what humanizes your business. And your business will change or evolve over time. 5 to 10 years from now, you might be doing something completely different. And so starting with your personal brand, to me, is much more important, because you will never, I mean, you will change, but like your name won't change, your image won't really change. So it's important to invest in that from the beginning, in my opinion, because you're starting to build a name for yourself. You'll start to associate, or the perception from your audience, they will associate you with your message, with your story, with your mission. I've been doing this for 2 years now, like I said, every day, posting content on the platforms that I feel work best for me and my business. And so I would obviously urge you all to do the same. Is pick 1 to 2 platforms where you think your audience is hanging out, and be very consistent with that. Some people, they think they can post once a week and that's okay, and it's, you get what you give, essentially. So with the fact that I took it, I've been on social media, like most of us have, probably for over a decade now, but I only really got serious and intentional about putting content out there that, like you said, Emee, about building your authority, positioning yourself as that expert that you want to be known for. And there will more than likely be a personal development incorporated into that. And that's actually what I've developed into my coaching as well, because it was, I went through imposter syndrome. I went through, like, who am I to be talking about this? I went through those motions, and now, that I've stuck it out and I was consistent with it, and I did the inner work, the interpersonal development work, to really step into that higher version of myself. And that right there is the biggest reason why I'm so passionate about it, is because if you have this vision, this grand vision for yourself, you're not going to wait till you feel like you've accomplished XYZ to step into that version of yourself. You need to make that choice today and decide that I am that expert. For me, obviously, I'm in marketing. So marketing and branding. And so I made the conscious decision to say that I am an expert in this field, and I know that I have all the knowledge. I went through that same year that I started doing this, I was just devouring knowledge, reading books, taking courses, because I was, for a little while, stuck in that mode of like, well, who am I to say I'm an expert? I need to have all the knowledge before I can say that. But combined with doing the outer training and learning, and the inner work of saying, I am worthy, I am an expert because I decided today that I am,
So
has
it's actually a balance, because for some people who are into branding and marketing and so on, they're all about just posting the stuff out there and producing content. But actually you need to do some inner work as well, because you need to be clear with yourself first. What are your core values? What's
yeah,
your purpose? What do you stand for? Unless that is clear to you, it's gonna be muddled, and people are, what you put out, it's going to be a little bit messy, because if it is not clear to you, then how is it going to be clear to everyone else? So I think you're right. There needs to be a balance there, and some inner work has to happen as well. Understanding your core values, understanding your purpose, understanding what you stand for, and then it could ripple from there. In my book, Imposter Syndrome Remedy, it's one of the books that I have out. A lot of online entrepreneurs experience that they're not good enough, that they are not expert enough, all these inner critic messages coming up. And it's not about really crushing the inner critics, but it's being aware of where those messages are coming from. And in my books, I teach the TLC questioning sequence. It's about asking 3 questions. You ask, is it true? Is it logical? Is it constructive? Because when you have those inner critic messages, some of those messages might be untrue, they might be illogical, they might be destructive. So you really need to understand, all these thoughts that are inside your head, and work out where these are coming from and what you can do about it. But when it comes to speaking your truth, Lindsay, I can understand why some people might be a bit reluctant to speak their truth, for fear of judgment, for fear of ridicule, for fear that people will think that they are frauds or whatever. So what what are the common inner critic messages that you've noticed that stop people from speaking their truth in the digital world?
Well, I would, yeah, and I love everything you just said, especially about the imposter syndrome. I might have to read your book. But yeah, I would say that it's really discernment is extremely important. And this is obviously all goes back to that inner work, that personal development that we have to do on a daily basis, like for me anyway. And I would highly suggest it for everyone because we're pretty much rewiring our subconscious, all of our old programming, the fears that we've developed over the years. I know for me, like I had a crippling fear of like me doing this right now. I probably would never do it like 2 years ago because I had such a crippling fear of public speaking. And I was able to trace that back to why do I have this fear? It's a silly
Mm,
fear, but I traced it back to that fear of judgment, that fear of being ridiculed and judged. And, once I got really clear on my mission, and I'm glad that you brought up core values too, because that's so important. I view core values as my guidance system for the messages that I'm sharing. So as an example, if integrity is one of your core values, sharing that in your message,
mm,
sharing that in your story. But to answer your question about speaking your truth, it's to kind of bring it to full circle what I was just saying, like it's the ego's story. So you need to be able to discern, if you're being guided by your intuition or are you being guided by your ego. And this is a lot of stuff that I've just learned in the last like few weeks and months is how to discern that. And your ego is always rooted in fear because it's
mm,
trying to protect you. So anytime that you sense fear, and there's nothing wrong with that, fear is an innate thing that comes up, and I've had to reframe how I perceive that as well, because we always want to look at fear as like a negative thing and like shying away from it. But now I am invited in so that I can try to understand like where is it coming from and be okay with the fact that it's there, but not let it stop me or
yeah.
cripple me.
Absolutely. It's interesting. We're so in sync, to be honest, because we were talking about imposter syndrome. Now we're talking about fear. And the interesting thing is, another book of mine is called Fear is Not My Enemy. And that's exactly that. It's recognizing that fear exists. But it shouldn't really fear shouldn't really stop you from doing what you want to do. I say fear is not my enemy because really it's just trying to protect you from potential risk. It's asking you to pause a little bit, and encourage you to consider the consequences, the potential risks, your ability to handle the risk, and the consequences of action or inaction. So, fear, you could experience fear, but that shouldn't really stop you from what you want to do in your life. It might ask you to pause, but it's just making you pause to consider what are the risks, what's your ability to handle the risk, and what are the consequences of action or inaction, so you will have a more informed decision on what you need to do next. Because if the risk is massive and if you have no capacity to manage that risk, the fear is there to protect you. So yes, in terms of speaking your truth, there are people, and especially for online entrepreneurs, the fear stops them from speaking their truth because they are afraid that people are going to judge them, or they are afraid that if they speak their truth, then they might lose connections with some people, and so on. But the fear is there. Acknowledge that it exists. Acknowledge what are the risks, what's your ability to manage the risk, and what are the consequences of action and inaction. And going back to what you were talking about in terms of your purpose, in terms of your core values, in terms of the legacy, in terms of your mission, that despite the potential risk of ridicule, despite the potential risk of failure or people cutting you off because you are speaking your truth, when you know that your mission is bigger than the fear, then it's gonna power you through.
And I was just going to piggyback off what you just said too, is that, another reframe for me is it's not about me. It's about the people that I'm serving and impacting. So over the years, when I've gotten so, just tripped up over my own fears and just paralyzed by it, I stopped myself and said, I don't care if people, first of all, I don't care if people judge me anymore. Like, of course, if someone were to like leave a negative comment, it's going to sting, it's going to hurt,
It still
but it's
hurts.
not going to
Yeah.
stop me. It's not, I've realized that when people judge, that's on them. That's
Mm.
their inner turmoil. That's a reflection of their own inner world. It's not, has nothing to do with me. And so, knowing that is, and being really rooted in my mission and who I'm here to serve and impact, I just become a channel for that. And everything else gets blocked out. And I'm not going to say that happened overnight. It definitely took some time. And along with, my mission of impacting, right now I feel calling to work with women. That's something that's developed over the last, 3 to 6 months. And so the program that I've created thus far is tailored to working with women. I just feel this calling to that because it really is more so women that have been blocked from speaking their truth and not really having the confidence to do that. And so those are the people that I really want to help, women that want to build a business that they feel like they can't take that next step, or they're not being 100% authentic and being themselves, to be able to speak their truth and incorporate that into their life's work. And
Yes.
so
Certainly, I do have some students who are currently writing their books, and one of them, not gonna mention any names, she's a little bit reluctant to share some sensitive aspects of her life, because first of all, it hurts. When you write about it, she's experienced some trauma and some pain. Obviously, when you recall the trauma, it can be quite painful. It's almost like reliving, the experience again. And there's a bit of reluctance to share that story, because first of all, some of the people involved in the story are still alive. There might still be people, or immediate friends and family who might identify um, the characters in the book. So there's a bit of reluctance there. So when it comes to fear, as I was talking about earlier, when you experience fear, because there are potential risks, and you might be brave enough to just share your truth, and just blurt it out as it is. But because of the potential risks of harm to yourself and to the people around you, you still need to pause and think about how you can minimize the risks. Are there ways that you could frame the story in such a way that it's not going to hurt the people who are innocent? Or is there a way that you could share this story without necessarily causing too much distress to the people who are still alive, or who are still involved in that story? So yes, you can speak the truth, but yeah, when it comes to fear, it's still about managing the risks. um you don't necessarily have to take unnecessary risks. You can still minimize the risk, but it's a matter of balancing and understanding your purpose. You mentioned earlier about remembering who you're trying to serve. And when you are feeling unsure about yourself, or when you are feeling the fear, I talk about the flashlight technique. When you flash the light onto yourself, all you can see will be the fear and the self-doubt and all the pain that you experience. But when you flash the light out, and you flash it out to the people who you are trying to serve, the people who will gain inspiration and people who can learn from your experience, when you shine the light out and realize that they are waiting for your message and they are waiting for the lessons that you've learned, not out of bitterness, but out of insight and grace. And I don't know about forgiveness. I think that's something that I'm still working on. And certainly there are some authors who are actually using writing as a way to express themselves, because they actually haven't um, what's the word I'm looking for? They haven't really figured out how to resolve those emotions. So they use writing as a way to express their emotions. But certainly the flashlight technique, when you shine the light out to the people who you want to serve, who you want to inspire and impact with your message, then you sort of forget about your own fears, and you forget about your self-doubt, because you are focusing on the people you are aiming to serve. What do you have to say about that, Lindsay?
Yeah, so I'm sure most authors are familiar with the hero's journey. I'm sure you are as well. So that's something that I apply, the way that and I think I mentioned I'm an aspiring author as well. So I'm going to be, of course, writing a book too, but, with my personal brand and putting my content out online, sharing my story and in vulnerable ways as well. I almost feel like a lot of my posts come across as like micro stories, because I'm very, and that whole process is actually what pulled out my passion for writing and expressing myself as well, just like you said, in a book. But I'm doing it in the online space right now, is that I focus on, and I, of course, everyone's story is different. I've been through some trauma throughout my life, but nothing major in my eyes. But I do incorporate that into my story as well. And I would say, I did a lot of the inner work to alchemize and like transmute that pain into purpose. And that's a common phrase a lot of people use, but you know, just working through that trauma throughout my life, whether it be with a coach or a therapist. And so, like I said, I feel like I've gotten to a point, I'm definitely not completely healed, but I've done a lot of the work, to a lot of the healing work. And so, I utilize almost like a framework of the hero's journey when I am creating a story, writing a story that I want to share with my audience, community, etc. And I talk about the lessons. I talk about what I learned through that process. I am, I would say that my biggest skill when it comes to writing is that I am very good at emotionally connecting, and I write in a very inspirational way. And so, if anyone can glean some insight from that, there's no right or wrong, or one way to do things, but that's the way that I do it, and it's cathartic. It's a
Oh
cathartic
yeah. I
experience.
mean, when it comes to sharing the hero's journey, or the hero story, certainly so many people in our community are interested in writing their memoir. They would have, they have a message to share because they've experienced something traumatic in their life, and they've healed, and they want to share and inspire others. So are there certain stages, or is there a particular framework that you can share with us to provide some structure when it comes to writing about the hero story?
Um, it's tough for me to say on the fly, because I just, when I start to write, I let it flow. And when I do that, I am always thinking about the reader. I'm thinking about how they're going to consume this piece of content. And I'm all, of course, I never, it's never perfect right off the bat. As we know, even when you write a book, it's always, the first version is always messy. And so I get my thoughts out on paper, and then I look at the way it's written. And I typically, I'm trying to think, I start I will start that post off with something that's like eye catching or attention
Mm.
grabbing, that sets the tone. So people are like, oh, I want to read a little, I'm curious, what is this about? And then I go into the story. And of course, again, it's all through my lens, right? So
Mm.
going back to what you were saying before, I know you have some authors in here that are, it's sensitive to other people in their life, but maybe you can think about telling the story in a way that is specifically through your lens, and leaving out a lot of those other details. So what was that experience like for you? What are the emotions that arise? Of course, if it's too painful, I wouldn't suggest doing that. But if you're in a period or phase of your life where you feel like you've alchemized the pain, like I said, and it's the huge lesson that you've learned on the other side of that. And that's what's cathartic for me, is
Mm.
that I wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't be the strong, resilient person that I am had I not gone through all of those trials and tribulations. And I'm sure there's many more to come in my life, but um just kind of reframing my mindset around all of that, and knowing that within obstacles there's opportunities, and adversity is really what makes us who we are. It builds our character. And so writing that out, of course, like I said, so sharing the story through your lens, and then what were the lessons that you took away from that, and what kind of person are you today because of that, and sharing that. And that's something that people will absolutely emotionally connect to and resonate with. Even if they didn't go through that same experience, they more than likely went through something similar. So
Yeah. So it's actually the learning and the recovery, and yes, you've gone through something difficult. You actually did overcome the challenges, but in the end you actually gained something from it, and you are the person that you are today because of the experiences that you've lived, that you've gone through in the past. So I think that's a really good takeaway message, for those who are thinking about writing a story, where where you experience something challenging, that some form of struggle, and yeah, you've recovered and you want to share your message, be a source of inspiration to those people who might still be in that position. Go for it, because if you can provide that hope to those people, that this is, there's light at the end of the tunnel. There are lessons that you can learn from what you are experiencing now, and there are also some steps. Also, I do know that, for example, there might be some people who are going through domestic abuse, and there are those who already managed to escape those abusive relationships. They could share their experience while they were in that relationship, how they are now, but also how did they manage to get out of that circumstance. So if you have that insight, if you have the experience that could help other people to get out of the horrible, circumstances that they are in, don't hold back. Go and share what you know, and offer that insight and information to those people who need that information right now.
absolutely, that totally speaks to who you're serving, and how you can help them with, even though it was a traumatic experience, you are the, I can't think of the word right now, but you are the messenger of that, of that traumatic experience. Even though it was so hard, it was painful and all of that, that's where the purpose comes out of that pain, is that now your purpose is to spread that message to others in hopes of helping them through similar situations.
Yeah, certainly. And what I've noticed, Lindsay, is for my students who are writing about their life, especially the ones who have gone through so much trauma, they have so much fire. Like they're so filled with purpose. The reason why they are writing their book is not just for their ego. It's not just to say, oh, I can write a book, I'm gonna write my book. It's not just about that. They actually do have those are readers in mind, that they want to be a source of hope and inspiration. And if they can ease their pain, if they can be that messenger, that look, things can be better, this is what you can do, and look, this is what I've become because I've managed to overcome these challenges. Just I really do admire my current students. You know who you are, and I'm watching you, and some of you, I know you are a little bit reluctant to get your books out because it's quite raw, it's sensitive, it can be quite controversial. But
Liberating.
if you need to seek legal advice because because of some of the sensitivities in your book, do seek legal advice if you have to. But always remember, keep moving forward. As long as you are holding on to this information, your readers are still there waiting for your message, waiting for the information that you are holding back. So if you're just holding it because of fear, if you're holding it back and not speaking your truth because you are scared of judgment and ridicule, and people might cut you off and so on, have a look, explore your fears, do the inner work, and then make an informed decision on what you need to do next. Because your readers are waiting, and if your book can serve others, because of the information that you're holding, it is your responsibility almost, actually, to share that information and to help them ease the pain, if you can. So, Lindsey, if you have any final words to our community members right now who might be a little bit reluctant in terms of speaking their truth, what do you have to say to them? Oh no, Lindsey. I think we lost Lindsey. Ah. I think we lost her. She's the video is completely frozen, but I think I'm gonna cut this recording now. I lost her. But I hope that you found this conversation helpful. If you would like to reach Lindsey. Oh, Lindsey, are you back?
I'm so sorry. My internet
Awesome, you're back. You're back. Yeah, I
I'm back.
just thank goodness you came back, because I was actually just I was I think I left you a question. If you have any final
Yeah, I heard you. I
words.
just it cut out right after that. I'm glad.
Okay.
There's always going to be judgmental people out there. So you might as well speak your truth. You know what I mean? And I had a quote that came to me that I had put in a post not that long ago that I thought was very fitting for this. And it goes, in a world where everyone pretends that everything is okay, vulnerability is a revolutionary act. And so being vulnerable, as scary as it can be at times, it's a very liberating feeling. And just know that, like I said, there's always going to be people out there that judge. But at the same time, there's going to be twice as many people out there that need your message.
There's two of you.
Sorry.
Awesome.
Yeah. It was I went back on my phone instead of my laptop, and then for whatever reason it popped back up. Sorry.
Technology, it's fine. So
Yeah.
there will be people who will judge.
There will always be people who will judge, but there'll be twice as many people out there who need your message, who will learn so much from your bravery. And that's exactly what we need more of in this world, is more real human authenticity, to drive, society forward and humanity forward. And so I would just say, don't let the fear control you. Just when you're ready, of course, go for it. And you will see just how liberating it is on the other side.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Lindsey, for sharing your insights with us. If people would like to reach you and, find you? Where can they find you?
Sure. So, of course, I'm on Facebook, I am on Instagram, and, kind of going back to what I said about personal branding, it's all under my name. So, you can find me by searching my name. If you'd like Emee to put, if you want, I can send you some links to add to the video when it does go up. And I do apologize for all of the tech issues here at the end, but I'm glad that we got through most of it. All right. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Social media, of course, is where you can find me.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Lindsey. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. I hope that you found this conversation helpful. If you're feeling reluctant, if you're feeling the fear about speaking your truth in the digital world, remember, yeah, fear exists. It's natural. It's a human experience. But look into where the fear is coming from. Have a look at the risks. Have a look at the your ability to manage the risk, and actually the other step that I'm forgetting is actually have a look at the people who you will serve, who actually do need to hear your message, especially if you're about to write a book who's going to inspire and impact the lives of so many people. Sure, there is a risk. Have a look at the risks, see how you can minimize the risk, and then make an informed decision on what you need to do next. But the last thing that you need to do is, the last thing that you must do is, to stop and not do anything about it. Explore it, see what you need to do, and then move forward, because those people who need to hear your message, they're waiting for you. So that's
Exactly.
it. Thank you very much, Lindsey. Thanks everyone for tuning
Thank
in, and
you.
we'll catch up again next time. We'll have another guest expert here in Self-Publishing Made Simple. But until then, take care everyone, and bye for now. Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.